The state of everything.
We gotta work on our soundtrack. Anyway,
Yo, fire
everything,
some beats up, Matthias.
dude. You're that vaporwave guy these days.
Yo, yo, give us a rhyme.
That's all on you, man. You got it.
You got it. It's a state of everything where we do the things and then we do the other things because we're the state of everything. What is everything? Who knows? Everything is everything in the world that goes around, in the world that the universe. You want a new world order, but I'm like, nah, I believe in the multiverse. So we should all just think our own way through the world and not rely on a big government to do everything for us that is whatever. Hey, I got Foster's today. It's Australian for beer, and they don't even have it in Australia, supposedly. My buddy went there once, and he's like, I couldn't find it. So it's Australian for beer, but you only get it in America. Cheers to that.
Nice.
Capitalism, baby.
Hop solo.
Hans, ooh, dude, hop solo. I like that. What is that?
Never feel like hopping alone. You can hop solo and drink this beer.
Cheers to America. We're sorry. Well, I should broaden it. The world is listening, not just America, but
Yeah.
the show
And
primarily.
if anybody, these radio waves somehow get, blasted out into the wider universe, then, welcome to other starlings out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're going universal with this. Like, I think if aliens knew about America and the world, they would know about this transmission probably before all else, because they're going for the realist. They're not going for what who has the most follows on Twitter, or like they're not going to @real Donald Trump. I mean, we know that. So it's good, man. I just wanted to apologize to the aliens that listened to us. Sorry we were off the air last week. A lot of different things going on. But we decided to take a little bit of a break, mostly because I don't know. It was a week of silence. There was a bit of there's heavy shit going on. Obviously, the Christchurch shooting happened, and we want to give all our condolences to all those people that lost their lives. Everyone who's losing their lives. We give our condolences out to them because it's a rough world out there, and there's a lot of hate and there's a lot of crime, a lot of horrible nonsense. So. Just want to shout out to everybody that's going through trials and tribulations. We're here. We hear you, and we want the best for you and your families. And there was also other heavy stuff that's happened over the weekend that we're probably going to talk about on this show, right, Matthias?
Yeah, for better or worse. I think sometimes politics just wears you down, and you don't feel like dealing with it. And I think that's what happened last week. Sometimes you just can't be bothered to give a damn. So, but we are back. Yeah, there's more ridiculousness is back on the platter, whether we like it or not. It's getting served to us, and we're all going crazy. I guess so. Cut to the chase here. Do you want to give a brief summation? I'm wondering about format. I mean, maybe it would be fun if you kind of walk through your impression of it, and I just interrupted you, and we went along incrementally.
Yeah. So the Mueller report happened. There's no collusion. Our president is not a Russian agent. Supposedly, we haven't read the whole report yet. I want to read the report. I think the American people deserve to read the report. But so far, I mean, what we do know is that there was no collusion, and he was right in all those stupid tweets. And that sucks because now Democrats have egg all over their face, and Rachel Maddow is about to cry.
Well, yeah, that's a good. I've had enough of that. Let me cut you off there. I mean,
What's
you said
going on with the Mueller report, man? What's happening?
Yeah, well, first things first, it's the bar summation of the Mueller report. We haven't received, nobody's read more than 4 incomplete sentences taken from the report. So nobody has read one full sentence from the report. And yeah, I mean, it's short. It's all of 4 pages. We just heard from Judge Napolitano from Fox News, respected judge from Fox News, supposedly was the first to hear that it's 700 pages long, which go figure. I mean, wow, that's interesting. But yeah, so we've gotten 4 incomplete sentences from 700 pages worth of material, and it's really, the Republicans are feeling vindicated, and good for them and good for the country. We have not been able to establish that anybody from the Trump campaign knowingly entered into a conspiracy to influence or subvert or change or alter the 2016 presidential election, and we should all be grateful for that. That would be pretty crazy if our president was working for a foreign power. I think every American should be happy that that's the case, just as, we should accept bare minimum that our president should do that, and it should never even be a question in the first place to have any whiffs of suspicion. It's a pretty low bar to set for a president not to ride. I'm sorry?
No pun intended.
Oh.
Put up them.
Oh man, you.
It's myself up.
It's a low bar to set. To be excited and stoked about that your president hasn't risen to the level of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, that he hasn't committed treason, essentially. If that's all that needs to be done, all that needs to be accepted, I think that there's a lot more to be found out. And I think there's a couple polls out there that still 56% of Americans still think Trump is, they're not totally believing him, and still think that there is something fishy or there's some culpability, something that's not totally okay happened between Trump and the Russians. So, which supposedly went up a couple of percentage points from, before this whole thing. So, which is really interesting that people actually, still find it, or more people potentially find it suspicious, or are not totally convinced. So, it's interesting, and I still think that we're, maybe in the 5th or 6th inning of this whole thing. I think every step along the way, people have wanted or expected things to move much quicker than they have. It's taught a lot of people patience, maybe, but I just don't think that, Mueller works on 2 years on this report, decides to say that, or finds that no collusion, or no evidence of collusion, that at least here's the thing. I'm just going to cut myself off here right now. The important thing is to take away here is that there's a very wide space that has been unaccounted for in the public mind. And all we know is that Mueller was unable to, that Trump, that there was evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump conspired with Russia. It's nothing positive has been said. Everything has been negative. All the report says is that he has not proven, he has not found enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump conspired with the Russians. And he is neither accusing Trump or exonerating him from committing obstruction of justice. So, I mean, when it boils down to it, that's what it says. And what that means is that Trump could have been as Benjamin Witt has said on Lawfare podcast, which I highly recommend that everyone listens to, that Trump could have been, going around to preschools teaching kids about the rule of law while all these other people around him were doing all of these things that he was unapproving or unaware of. Or he could have been accepting all this aid and encouraging it without having, and there's just not enough proof or not enough evidence that would prove that beyond a reasonable doubt that he was engaging in something he absolutely should not have. So maybe there's plenty of evidence that people can look at, and on, there's a difference between criminal and civil cases. What can be, convict you of a crime, criminal code, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't know what it is for civil, but it's less. So a lot of questions still out there, and I'll cut myself off there.
All right, but there's 700 pages or whatever, and Mueller himself isn't denying any of the reports that Barr has put out there.
Of course he isn't. That's why he was hired for the job, because if he started speaking out, he's going to remain silent, because he cannot pick sides after this, just like he couldn't pick sides before it. Just like he's done it, he's going to let it speak for himself, and I guarantee you the man will be a shadow, for a while. He's not going to – I don't think so. I don't think he's going to talk about anything, really. Anyway.
Well, but amidst all the research that you've done and all the people that you read and all these intelligence agencies that have been flat out, they have been saying there is collusion. Like, they're not – over the last 2 years, people haven't been speculating on the left. People have straight up on these mainstream – they have, though. They've said that – people have said that he is a Russian asset. So how do you walk that back? And I'm asking you because you've done research on this subject. How is there no collusion when – from what we've said, or what you've told me at least, or at least my impression is that you have believed that there is collusion, and that all of these people kind of agree that you're always the intelligence agencies, I suppose, are saying that the Russians were the ones that, they're the ones that had the troll farms, and basically they built meme factories to try to influence the election. But that doesn't mean that Donald Trump himself actually physically did anything, even if his son and some people around him were absolutely idiotic in the sense of welcoming meetings with Russians and foreign agents and that kind of thing. But it doesn't mean that there was any foul play actually on Donald Trump's part. I guess I'm just trying to understand how this is possible when there are so many talking heads that were seemingly incredibly convinced. People focus on this a lot, man. You focused on this a lot. Like, I watched this one YouTube video. It showed all the times Rachel Maddow mentioned Russia in one episode, and it was like, over 60, man. It's like there was a bit of a fervor around this that almost it was like your Overton window on the left, though. It's like we're gonna say it so much that it's gonna be true. There has to be collusion. There has to be. There's no way it can't be.
Well, yeah, and both sides. Yes, but at least they're focusing their interest on something that's intensely important. It's because it's an unprecedented situation to even be questioning the fact that your president is a, agent of a foreign power potentially, or is subject to influence, by a hostile foreign power. So it's good that the country is concerned. That's something that's worth being concerned about. And the right goes into crazy, Trump calls the media, he's called it used to just be the fake news media as people. Now it's just mainstream media that is the enemy of people. So if one side has to focus and be concerned about something and maybe go a little bit too far, it's very clearly the people who are concerned about the rule of law and the health and safety of American democracy. But that said, I don't necessarily think that they were going overboard. I think that this stuff was in the news. I think the president was saying no collusion every other day, denying it, by virtue of his actions and the things that he was saying. He was also drawing attention to it or keeping the controversy alive because he's incapable of being reserved and not being the focus of attention every second of every day. So it goes both ways. But I mean, ultimately here too, we're talking like it's totally vindicated him, and that we haven't read 4 sentences, and this is the problem. This is the whole problem to begin with. I think that this country has gotten so wrapped up, in finding and following and, fixing your mind on the next drama and scandal that's going on. And I think that this worked. Attorney General Barr did not need to opine on whether or not the president committed obstruction of justice. He could have, he could not have. There was nothing saying that he needed to do that. There was nothing saying that he didn't have to say that. But it definitely helps his boss to say that. And then the rest of the country now has a narrative in their heads, and the two sides can go at it back and forth. And this is a huge win for Republicans, which is fine. But it's still, we have not seen in any of this report. And much of it's going to get redacted, and people are going to fight back and forth about what can be redacted. And then they're going to call Mueller to the stand, to testify. They're probably going to call Barr to testify, maybe Rosenstein. This is going to keep playing out. But for right now, because, everything is, it's the politics of eternity. This is what I've said this before, I think. It's the ever-present present. There's no future. There's no past. It's the all-eternal now. And if that's what it is, then as a people, it's just what does it say? What does it say? And we keep rehashing us in the same. There's nothing to talk about, so then we rehash it more, and people argue about it and fill up the waves on radio and television and whatever, and draw these conclusions and talk about it, and people decide. And by the time that the actual outcome or the truth comes out, people's expectations are so distorted and so just already firmed up that no matter what comes out, if it's not the absolute worst case scenario, then it's almost a letdown, and people just shrug their shoulders and move on and wait for the next catastrophe. The education department is cutting all federal funding for the Special Olympics. That's the next outrage for today. What'll it be tomorrow? I mean, and then we just move on. So I don't know. I mean, that's my general idea of the whole thing, right? If there was any room for nuance, if people had any, just taking things with a more macro look, a higher, I just don't see the media as covering these things with enough nuance and talking about it with enough, which kind of is frustrating, because these are the reality, and people read these words. I mean, the reality is that those 4 pages, each word is dissectable by a lawyer to mean one thing or another. The placement, the meaning, everything in the context, and how it relates to the law. And I don't know that shit. I've listened to a couple of podcasts about it, and people are that, and that's what it is. So I guess I shouldn't expect the American public to know these things, but maybe having a little bit respect for the complexity of these things, and before, and that's why most Americans, 56% of them, still are not buying it. Believing Trump and saying he's exonerated and no, he's free and nothing's wrong. It's well, wait a minute. Does this on its surface, this is what's so interesting, is because we need to have somebody who look into this and be the arbiter of truth in Mueller. But what is he the arbiter of truth of? What are the standards that he was looking into? Something very specific. Did President Trump or any of his campaign conspire with Russia? There's a lot. That is about as bad as it gets, and there's a lot of bad things that you can do along the way to doing that horrible treasonous act. So and he was not able to pull together enough evidence that would prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did that. So, but there's plenty that we have not known, not found out along the way that could be just looking. We already know these things. He was pursuing a deal to build a building in Moscow. I mean, what does Mueller mean that's different from conspiring to planning and agreeing upon swinging an election? Or does this nonetheless mean that he could have, that it's not conspiring, but it's something else that he clearly should not be doing? Is anybody, I mean, this is why he also did not come to a conclusion, I think, on obstruction, because ultimately it's up to, I think he's following the Watergate precedent in presenting both points of view. This is what looks like he could have obstructed justice, and this is what, evidence that could exonerate him, and let you, the people, decide. This is ultimately going to come down to Congress, which is as the way it should. The people, the representative of the people and our government. And we're a long way off from, or a short way off. We're just, who knows when it's coming, when they're going to finish and release this report, and people will start having that conversation.
They said weeks, not months. They're supposed to release it.
Yeah.
At least to Congress.
So, yeah. And then they're going to have all these testimonies or hearings, I think. We're already going to have Barr come in. After Barr, we'll probably have, Mueller or Rosenstein or something.
They're going to subpoena Mueller, supposedly.
Yeah, potentially. So I was definitely disheartened at first. And I mean, I was disheartened because Mueller did not my first initial reaction was like, it would have been nice for him to say one way or the other on obstruction too, just to have a final conclusion. And it's kind of unsatisfying that he left that choice open purposefully to the American people, that, he can neither confirm nor deny or exonerate, the obstruction charges. This does not, exonerate him. And of course, Trump and everybody else says the complete opposite, that it's a total vindication and whatever. It's like, well, that's literally the opposite of what Mueller wrote. That doesn't matter, apparently. But, so it's, yeah. But Barr, making that judgment himself, because he has a unitary executive view of the executive branch. This is not the most accurate lawyerly interpretation, but my understanding of the unitary executive is that the president, as the embodiment of the executive branch, which is charged with enforcing the law, essentially cannot break the law if he himself is the law. Which, if you have that view, then obviously you can't really obstruct justice. He also says that he did not commit any underlying crime, which was conspiring with Russia.
If he said that, then there's a period to that. Then he did not commit any crime in conspiring with Russia. So the further you go down the rabbit hole on that, it's going to sound more conspiratorial.
I mean, or
you veer into being an Alex Jones on the left. The longer you pound the desk about there was conspiracy. I mean, there was collusion.
Is it a conspiracy that Paul Manafort is going to jail?
For what though? For lying to Congress, right?
Yeah. No, for fraud and tax fraud and money laundering. I mean, these things are not all entirely unrelated. As much as Trump would like you to believe that he just happened to hire this campaign manager who is as really a bad guy when it comes to money, but the fact that everything comes back to Ukraine, and by the way, they've denied everything. Look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of smoke that, like, you can believe our eyes and everything that's happened before, in the sense that they asked for assistance. They were stoked about it, took multiple meetings. They passed campaign data along to Russians. They were pursuing a building in Moscow throughout the entire election.
Yeah, but this is one of those things, though, potentially, that...
I mean, you can talk about stuff that Trump has done while in office, but my point is that these paint all of this together paints a story that could very well be in the pages of the Mueller report. And we also have to I mean, this is why the obstruction of justice charge also matters too, because if there's a lot of evidence that shows that he was messing around and doing stuff that he shouldn't have done, and then he lied and everyone else around him lied at every step of the way. They denied the existence of any Russian influence in the beginning. Then it was denying and saying it could have been anybody, and denying that it even happened. Then, I mean, it's every step of the way. They've lied about everything. They've denied everything. And oh, by the way, people are beginning to serve jail. There's multiple cases open. There's about 20 more investigations that are still ongoing, that are spread throughout multiple districts. People are still coordinating and helping investigators, cooperating witnesses. The investigation that Mueller was just in charge of, that he himself was leading, has been farmed out, not only to these other districts, Southern District of New York, Eastern District of Virginia. It's gone back. It's migrated back into the Justice Department. So these are ongoing things, and to suggest that it's over or in any way done, the political judgment that the American people are going to have to make on what happened in 2016 and whether or not Trump is fit for office, to say that is done just seems very foolish and way too early to call. But
well, look, I mean,
their interests.
If the 2020 candidates on the Democratic side, if they focus too much on this, they run the risk of having Russia turn into the left's Benghazi. That's the problem I see. Because you don't want to go overboard with all this, man. I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of this. What's up?
To be fair, I think that, I don't know. I feel like most of the Democratic candidates have, I mean, they've talked about Russia, but I feel like they're really focusing on other things.
Good. Well, that's good. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what should happen.
Yeah, I agree.
I lost my train of thought, but I was going to say something really profound.
It's all good. Do you have any, as your early dark horses of the Democratic primary, have you changed allegiances, or are you liking anybody else, or?
Who cares, man? It's like it's way too early.
Yeah.
I mean,
good answer.
It doesn't matter. I wish I remembered what I was going to say, though, because it was related to the Russia thing. But I guess the point I want to make about probing the whole issue of Trump and Russia, it's like there are other things that we could be focusing on. There's other things that our tax-paying money can go into, as opposed to endless investigations about whether Trump is connected to Russia. I understand that it's a big deal, and it has enormous implications on our democracy. But at some point, I think it's wise to just say, like, look, it's potentially a non-issue, man. If you have facts that say that, like, I just think that we can't just speculate, and we have to move forward to things that actually are affecting everybody. I think you're right about the whole, like, maybe majority of Americans don't buy it or whatever. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that most Americans honestly want to move on, and they want like real things to be solved in their lives. There's real issues, there's real pressing problems. You know, Cardi B's out here drugging dudes, and you know, there's a lot of crap, man. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, and it's like Russia and Trump, like, he's a mob guy. He's a shady businessman, and I've always had the belief that he is corrupt as a businessman. And he does some shady things, and I don't, because of that, I don't personally think he would be the best. You know, I wouldn't say he's not fit for office because of that, but yeah, maybe you are. Maybe you're unfit for office if you're a shady businessman. That's my point of view. But at the same time, it's almost like, what can we actually do moving forward? Like, if that didn't exist, like, forget if, I mean, I know that you know, Russia is a big deal to you and all that, but it's like, the less time we focus on Russia, the smaller they become. They're nothing. Russia is just, they're desperate. They're desperate for our attention. They're desperate for us to take them seriously. And we do it more and more with the more hysteria that there is around issues like this. If we just said, fuck off, let's move on to more serious things that have they're pressing issues in this country. Like, whether our president is an asset or not, he's not a Russian stooge at this point, based on what we know. So it's like, okay, we can keep putting our resources and investing time and money into this potential non-issue. I know you're going to say it's a potential non-issue, and you think that it is an issue still, and it might be, but it's like, at some point, man, we're going to have to just, like, redirect our attention and, like, not get so hysterical about all this. Like, you watch people on, like, MSNBC, almost like they're so emotional about it. And it's like, I get it. I mean, because the idea is that American democracy is, at stake to a foreign power. Of course, it's a big issue. But if it's not a real thing, you know, it's not that it's not a real thing. There are more real things. There are things that are even bigger issues to everyday Americans right now. Automation being one of them. You know, inequality, like all wealth inequality, healthcare. I mean, people are dying, man. And so it's like, look, at some point, people are just going to turn away and say, I don't give a fuck about Russia. I don't give a fuck. That's the risk that you run into with all of this.
Yeah. Yep, but I think people are animated enough by the stakes and by their incredibly strong dislike for the current president because of the way he behaves and the actions that he takes. And so that's why I think a lot of people find release, and apparently there's a huge energy and hunger in this country for that type of content. Just like on the right, there's a huge energy and market for a president who acts like a total buffoon, and he's meeting that market. So I mean, if you want to talk about the financials of what these investigations have cost, you know, it's amounted to a meager fraction of what it cost, Trump and his flights down to Mar-a-Lago. You know, the budget that they just cut with the Special Education Olympics is like, 2 trips for him down to Mar-a-Lago. So, I mean, and yes, you could say that the left is fixating on this, but to your point earlier, the right fixated on Benghazi for years. It's like,
that's not a good thing. They made it look like lunatics.
I know, but between the two, just because we wasted our time and energy and national attention on one, does it mean that we need to move on now and move on and not get to the bottom of probably the most sacred thing that you can do as a citizen, as a free citizen? Having your vote count and not be influenced by, fake news to be persuaded one way or the other, and have, what's the level of corruption that's going on? What is the level of deceit and I mean, this administration has just been one gigantic clusterfuck. All of it has from day one.
But you know that whether
So every day it's either we don't respond to how much of a gigantic fuck up this administration is by its own accord. You know, like there are things that are happening that are good, that he is doing well in some cases. I mean, let's acknowledge that there are things that he has done. You know, you can say that he's put on a good emphasis on China, trying to, you know, figure out how to trade with China. You can say he did something, you know, I mean, he's done well in Syria, but like he wanted to pull out like inexplicably, you know. There are areas you can say that he you know, is doing well, and you can also say like he's doing, you know, the economy in the country is doing well despite him too. I mean, can you imagine if there was a real crisis, if there was a September 11th, if there was, I mean, we had a hurricane in Puerto Rico and they're still like dealing with that. So, and that was a pretty real crisis. So, but like in a national crisis, the type of, you know, financial crisis that happened with Bush and Obama, I mean, we should consider ourselves really lucky. So it's all in your mindset. And you know, yes, I would like to look and do other things. And those are all important things that need to be done. But, you know, this country is just so divided that I don't see it. And I don't see the Democrats caring and the left caring about the legitimacy of their democracy and whether, you know, just paying attention to the administration and, you know, maybe taking a step back and thinking for themselves and considering whether or not the actions and behavior of this administration is morally acceptable or legally acceptable. Those two things are very different. So, but I don't blame it on the Democrats that, you know, I mean, yeah, they do divisive things and they don't, and yes, they're not perfect, but like the fact that people care about this and are looking into it, versus the people who are instigating it and doing all of these things. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that the division and the lack and the partisanship is going to continue whether or not the Democrats just throw up their arms and say, all right, let's just move on. We're already so divided. Yes, we want to do other things, but you know what, go ahead and do what you want with, you know, just have your way with, you know, these investigations and, you know, declaring national emergencies to fund a stupid pet project border wall. I mean, real constitutional issues are at stake, and it's just because they happen day after day and new stupid scandals happen hour after hour that like people are still caring about them and, you know, keeping them at doing their best to, you know, keep the dam, you know, in one piece. I don't see what's going to happen. I think the next 2 years, no matter what goes on, this is how Trump operates. This is how he existed before he was president, and this is how he's going to exist until the day he dies. Is that he's just going to be the center of attention. He's going to create controversy, and he's going to look out for number one, no matter what the situation is with other people. You know, his movement included. I think at some point he's probably, you know, he's going to burn. He almost burned them with the wall, but you know that was really close. That's why, you know, declaring the national emergency was saving grace. But he can't turn on his own base while he's in power. But afterwards, he'll probably, you know, does he have an allegiance with does Donald Trump really have a bond, a very, you know, an eternal supreme leader, loving relation bond just with, you know, blue collar, Rust Belt, coal miner America? those are two separate universes. It's all just, it is what it is. But yeah, man, that's all of it that I can think of right now.
Yeah. I mean, look, if there is every reason to be investigated and to have scandal, have to have investigation after investigation with this president, then so be it. In his defense, it would be a shame if his entire first term was just marred with investigations, though, only because the other side doesn't like the job that he's doing. And that's the fear I have going into 2020 is if you have reasons to investigate, go ahead. But public perception matters, and on the right, these people that we can be swaying on, these people that the presidential candidates on the left can sway. If these potential voters all think that it's just a witch hunt, which Trump has done a good job of spreading that message, if they believe that it's just a investigation after investigation just because you don't like him or you're triggered or you're offended, that's the trouble that we get into. That started with his election. Was there was just these videos of these like feminists just screaming, and it's like, all right, like, yeah, like I was shocked too, but like, what do we do from here on out though? Do we just, stop him at every turn? Do we acknowledge that like some of what he's doing might be helping the economy or whatever? Or do we just look to the future and say, look, like, how do we move forward in a better way with or without him? And that's the future I want, because yeah, like he still has a good chance of winning the re-election in 2020. And this is my view, for the last few years has always been like whether or not a foreign power influenced the election, it's like almost irrelevant to me. I mean, not that it's irrelevant, but it's like Trump would have beat Hillary Clinton anyways. Like I think that the election, the way it was, kind of looked right. It didn't look crazy to me that she won the popular vote and he won overall. Like that looked about right in terms of the overall climate of the country, how people feel about her, how people felt about the Democratic primary, and how people felt about an anti-establishment businessman coming in and shaking things up. It seemed right to me. Like it was a populist election, and a populist was always going to win, which is why I originally supported Bernie Sanders, because he was the populist on the left. And the people on the left were too stupid to realize that, because they needed to have their candidate. It was her turn, whatever. No, it wasn't. Like it was his turn. But moving forward, we can rewrite, the narrative. Like we can look forward and say, look, like this guy's had his turn and people are still pissed for a number of reasons. And what do people actually want? Do they want a wall, or do they want, us to tackle the biggest issues that are going on in people's daily lives right now? I don't know if Russia would be one of those. Maybe it is to most people, but I think most people are worried about healthcare, the future of jobs, and having decent lives for their families. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a telling. Like it's going to be fascinating, man. 2020 is going to be fascinating because I think the soul of America. I mean, 2020 vision. That alone, man. That's a really interesting concept that I think we're going to be. It's going to be no, but seriously, like I've thought about this. Like there's going to be a lot more clarity in terms of what the soul of America is, man. Like. It was funny, dude. I saw Andrew Yang, man. He's going to debate Ben Shapiro on the subject of circumcision. It's like, I mean, we're coming into weird territory where it's like, what do we like? Let's get really into all the issues, man. Every issue, like, why is female genital mutilation bad but male and it's illegal in most countries, but male genital mutilation is welcomed and it's legal in a lot of countries. And it's like, little things like that I see that aren't necessarily little things, but we're going to have really interesting debates going forward this next year or two about, where do we, what do we believe in and what is right and what is okay. And I think we 2016 was so emotional and crazy. I think now that we experience that going forward, we're going to, I'm hoping that it's going to be more rational, but with the way that we consume our information now, I think we've talked about this before, but this is the biggest, one of the biggest obstacles is, my boy Tim Pool said this on one of his shows, his YouTube thing. I think he's an independent journalist, and it was an interesting comment. Something like, people used to go to their rally or their protest like once a week or once a month or whatever, and they'd let all their anger out and all their passion and everything about what they believe in. That is transformed into the 24/7 news cycle now, where now on social media, all our voices are amplified all the time. You never leave the rally. And your rally ideas are clashing with all the other people that are at their rallies. So it's like now, of course, there's going to be an online culture war if that's the case. If that's, social media's unleashed our deepest urges and our inclinations, and it's all clashing with everybody else. And it's good for debate, but it's also incredibly dangerous because now that can trickle into the streets. And if people just are simply not going to get along and not going to compromise and just aren't going to be willing to listen to the other side, then there's a potential for, I don't know, violence, I suppose. But I think I'm veering off into the extreme of what that could be. My original point, though, was that because of all that, and because we know about the differences and what we hate about each other and everything, I'm hoping that we become a little bit more rational going forward. And yeah, man, I mean, the presidential election isn't everything, but it does say a lot about, what people value and what they're interested in. And that's why it's fascinating times, man. I mean, it's interesting stuff.
I think that I like that Andrew Yang is. I don't think he's got a chance to win. I'd be surprised if he thought he had a chance to win. But he's. I mean, how do we put ideas out in the national consciousness? I mean, you float them at presidential elections if you're serious about them. I mean, for 2 years, the entire country is, or at least 1 year in primaries, they'll be talking about this, and it's good. I mean, it's for the future. That's why he's. I mean, that's why he's doing it. He's introducing the idea seriously as a candidate, and some people are going to vote for him seriously on the issue
Of universal basic income. That's what his main thing he's running on, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, that's what distinguishes him, I would say, from, like, that's his issue. I mean, that's like what he's. I don't know what else he's. I mean, that's his brand, right? Because we're so laser focused, and maybe I'm part of that. It's just super early, and it's like Andrew Yang, UBI, Tulsi Gabbard, Assad, and Russia. I'm kidding.
Buttigieg, man. Pete Buttigieg. That guy's making waves, supposedly. That's what everybody's saying. All the mainstream media is saying Pete Buttigieg is making moves, so he must be making moves, right? What does that mean?
I don't know. He seems like he can speak different languages. He's a smart guy.
He's gay. Great for the identity politics.
Great for the identity politics. And
he has butt in his last name. It's perfect.
Apparently, I am the child.
I'm the child.
Yeah, I don't. So I don't know. I mean, you kind of threw a lot there. That good, a lot of good stuff, a lot of ideas. But I'm not really sure where to go from there. I think, Russia is like not what people want to focus on all the time. If we can move on and do other things, I think that would be great. I think as a country, we're going to have to just figure out how to get, we're the most prosperous this country has ever been, in the most peaceful time, really, that we're at war, but does it feel like we're at war?
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, we have been set. We are a free, prosperous, most powerful country on earth, and we have been set free to gnash our teeth and wail and moan at each other and accomplish nothing. So, I think that it's a real tragedy that we have. But I don't view it as any other choice. First, you protect your democracy and your sovereignty, and then you learn from this low point in American politics and then we move forward and figure out how the hell we talk to each other. And maybe this is a good start, though. It's like, hey, we can all appreciate the rule of law, right? Right? Yes. Okay. Rule of law. What, how did we get to this? We haven't had a reckoning yet. I think it would actually be pretty nice if we had a 9/11 style commission on it. Send a whole bunch of people to be off on their own, quiet, out of the news for however many, months or years it takes to get to the bottom of whatever the hell happened in 2016. I mean, we can all
agree. Just did? Isn't that what the point
is? That's what he did. That is what he did. That is what he did. But maybe
do it all over again.
No, but that was one aspect. Criminal. All it just rose to was the level of criminal, whether or not a criminal conspiracy happened. I don't know. The truth is, this is why we need to find out the report, just to see what he wrote. If people still have questions, maybe they're worth consideration. But look, do we think that this is on the same level of 9/11? What this means?
Wow.
Maybe people won't, which I can understand. We're the way that the
lives weren't lost, man. Nobody got killed.
That's true. I mean,
not even the same boat.
That's true.
But
there are other things that are just as important, So I just think that in the scale of what our government is doing and does, it's I just expect that our government, and it would be nice to have a country that is mature enough to accept and support both things, demand maybe both things, to say our government is going to work on its own and be productive, and we are also going to have a commission that's going to look into this, because we are a strong country that can, our government should be able to do these, to multitask like this, and we are going to grow up as a people and let this issue subside and just be on the back burner while we focus on making lives better, making American lives better.
Making America great again.
Yeah, it's so much greater, and we're finally great again, But actually, it's all the problem of the Democrats. He blames everybody for everything else. So it's the Democrats is why we're good. America is good. We're still not great, though. And that's why after 2020, we can really get to be great.
Well, speaking of the left, man, these whatever, what about Jussie Smollett, man? What's going on with that guy? He's from your Chicago place. If he didn't fake a hate crime against himself, which is absolutely atrocious, why are all of his charges dropped? Who did this then? It makes absolutely no sense. Look at this, man. The mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, says that this is a whitewash of justice from top to bottom. This is not on the level, whatever. Judge Maggots, we stand behind the investigation. We stand behind the decision to charge him. The fact that he feels that we have exonerated him, we have not. I can't make it any clearer than that. How does this guy walk away with this insane thing that just went down? He says he was truthful the entire time, but how can he be? What nobody knows what happened here. How does a guy get off this just because he's an Empire actor? This is the privilege issue this is another breaking point, man. We didn't really talk about this tonight, but we could talk about it another time. Another breaking point in this country is this issue of privilege and corruption that relates to it. This education scandal is insane, and people are rightly incredibly pissed about it, about how people are just paying bribes to get their kids in, faking, being on a crew team or whatever. The same thing is going on with this guy now, it seems, because he's a gay black man that's on TV, and people are like, look, I don't know. He cried the victim card, and people believed him, as they should, because it's a horrible thing. Hate crimes are horrible, and they're a real thing. And then they went into, I don't know how much money went into this investigation, but it's just an insane story, man, that I don't really know much about, except that, it makes me sick to my stomach that a guy like that if he did fake this hate crime, he's walking away free. He's going to go back on TV. If anybody should go to jail, it's someone like that, man, who is feasting on the division and the hate and the the craziness right now and saying, you know, oh, they attacked me and said this is MAGA country, even though there's video that proves that these 2 Nigerian guys bought like ski masks and stuff and whatever before this whole thing. What do you say about all this, man? It's a really crazy story, man. I don't know what's happening.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that it's reprehensible, and it kind of seems like a double standard and doesn't seem totally fair, and there's a lot of shadiness to it. But you know, welcome to Chicago. You know, there's maybe you know, people are looking at this through a national lens, but this is Chicago. This is kind of how Chicago. I mean, one of our mayoral candidates is, you know, has these connections to a guy who mayor or Alderman Burroughs on investigation about, you know, using his own power. There's, you know, strong, you know, she collected donations. He rose. So, you know, I'll give you another example. O'Hare Airport is getting totally renovated, and the architect is being chosen in secret. You know, they're putting it all to a vote. Which design do you all want? You know, which do you guys like the most? But we're going to choose it, you know, separately and in secret. So, you know, this is nothing new. It's terrible. It's stupid. It doesn't. Yeah, anybody who could look on this on a straight face can see this doesn't add up. But this is Chicago, and this problem has been going on for a long time, and it's going to take a long time for this city to clean up, if ever. People have been talking about it for decades, whether or not that city is going to clean up. Laquan McDonald, the shoot, you know, 2014, whenever that was, they just finished that up. They just found out that though the police officer is going to go to jail, there was no police cover-up in it, which I think plenty of people, you know, I don't want to go on one side or the other because I do not know. I just do not feel confident in offering an opinion. But plenty of people, I think, don't take that decision at face value, and so yeah, it's bogus. But
I mean, is it though? I mean, like, I mean, what if he it was proven that he wasn't attacked, right? I mean, nobody knows what happened. I mean, he obviously made all this up, right?
I don't see how. I don't understand what changed or what he was telling. I don't understand how we got from A to C. A was he said that he was beaten up and there was a hate crime that was perpetrated against him, and that didn't happen. So that doesn't add up. And now he says that he's telling the truth, and he has, you know, will not be punished, will receive no punishment for it. So I don't know if it's a quirk in the legal system where they've, you know, just avoided doing something or another so that now he can go and it's a legal matter that's been resolved. But it doesn't seem fair at all.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah. You know, and this is what, like, on the left, they're pissed off about, you know, Paul Manafort. The first sentence was, you know, people were all pissed off about that. And, you know, when these parents, this higher ed thing, what's going to happen with the parents, you know, getting their kids into these universities? Are they going to spend any time in jail? Yet, you know, by the way, we've sent people to jail for like voter fraud, you know, accidentally, you know, voting with the wrong something or another, or, you know, I mean, this is why people, you know, legalizing marijuana and exonerating all the people who are in jail for, I mean,
Chicago, right? In Chicago, there's got to be
everywhere. It's across the whole
but this whole thing with the Smollett thing is so ironic too, because this guy who's an elite, you know, is getting away with all this, but these poor guys that are just on the street smoking a joint or whatever are locked up for God knows how long. And this is another issue, man. This is what we're entering into this era where I mean, as a white male, maybe I don't have the right perspective to comment on this, but I see where our divisions too are becoming less about race going forward. The left wants to focus so much about race and identity politics, and like, like we have to separate everybody, and you're the this and you're the that. But it's more of an elitist thing, man. It's more about if you have money and you have connections to power in this country, no matter what you look like, you're going to be fine. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. Why don't we get this straight? Like, it's not about color of your skin anymore. It's not about race. That was the last century. Now we're in this thing where, if you got money and if you're connected, then you're going to be fine. And if you're not, then you're going to be fucked. And it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. Maybe, you have a higher chance of being an elite, being certain races or whatever, ethnicities, but it's bogus, man. That's not what we are anymore. We're not there anymore. So people need to stop with this whole, like, the white males are evil. There's a whole new Converse ad, the whole go woke, you go broke, about how, all these white males are just like, horrible to these women who are just trying to do their thing and live their own lives and everything. It's like, why are you pandering like this? Why do you have to keep going with this fucking narrative that, like, it's always the white's fault when, like, maybe it's just fucking corrupt rich people? I don't give a shit what they look like. If they're white, then fuck them. If they're whatever they are, it's horrible. And it's an elitist issue. We are becoming, it's the Civil War is not so much left and right either. It's this culture war is also, the haves and the have-nots. I've said that for years now. It's the haves and the have-nots. This is how we're going to fight going forward. Do you have things? Do you not have things? This is why the socialists are out there saying, I'm going to take from the people who have, we're going to give it to the have-nots. This is why the extreme anarcho-capitalists are saying, fuck you, I have this money, it doesn't matter, I fuck you money. I don't give a shit. I don't care about if you're a socialist. Go whine on the street. I'm going to stay in my gated mansion, that's fenced, paid a lot of money for that wall.
Yeah, it's just like what rich people do. Why? They like everybody else, but they just like their own gated walls. Yeah, I mean, I think that I get that, and I think that there's elements of truth to it. I think that there's also still very much issues of discrimination that are going on, and right, like there's still racism. I mean, I think all the white supremacists, like, anti-Muslim, anti-Jewish stuff going on, all that stuff, like, is very, very real.
We need to talk about it on a global level, though, because in this country, sure, but Muslims in Saudi Arabia are religious nationalists who don't care about anybody but themselves, and the Zionists in Israel are the same way. They're ultra nationalists that say you can't be a non-Jew to be in this country. So we're gonna talk about this country. You can talk about the white supremacists, the white identitarians, right?
They're all okay. Look, that's I think rational. Like, there are things that are similar and things that are not. And I see your point that, I mean, if you want to compare what this guy did, and I mean, or what like the far right is to like ISIS and those people who are fighting, extremism, then yeah, they're all the same. All these people, who are terrorists and operating on religious extremism, nationalist, white supremacist extremism, then like, yeah, they're all the same, and they're all, ISIS.
Our own allies, though. A far-right Israeli government that kills Palestinians for not being Jewish, and you have a Saudi government that doesn't give a shit about anybody unless you're – that is – I mean, if you criticize that, you're Islamophobic or you're an anti-Semite, apparently. But it's like that's a double standard, too. Of course, you have these far-right white identitarian types.
That's what the right is doing, though. That's what the right is saying in this country, is that if the far right, so like, are they using the same defense? Are they defending white supremacist extremism, or just nationalism by saying if you criticize, the Jewish state, well, they're the ones who are criticizing other people for criticizing the Jewish state. So are they getting it both ways? I mean, I don't really understand this. They're also the ones who are defending Saudi Arabia and trying to, who's criticizing, what are we criticizing Saudi Arabia? What's the context of that. I mean, these are different things. Like ultimately, my point is that these acts of violence perpetrated by white supremacists and nationalists have increased since Donald Trump has become president. There's a movement across the world. It's all across the world. There's the populism and xenophobia and Islamophobia. That's all. And that just because there's these other bad actors in the world that are religious extremists that exist, that doesn't make any of this situation good. It's just that
we're okay with that though. But we're okay with them being ethnic nationalists over there.
But we criticize them from a point of moral superiority because we don't have this, we don't tolerate it, we condemn it, which hasn't happened by our president. Our president has not condemned. He has had multiple opportunities to condemn, in very strong terms, what should be condemned on its own face. In very strong terms, and he just refuses to do it. So a wink and a nod, and okay, now we're all in the gutter. Great. We used to be from a point of moral superiority when we used to talk about how these things were all repulsive, but not anymore.
We've always been tribalists, though, and you're blaming it on Trump, but it's more of a shifting globalization aspect of what the world is turning into. And when you say you send me things about how nationalism is evil and how whatever we should have like a wealth. I know you didn't say this, but like people would think that we should all just be a one world order kind of welfare state where we all get along. I come from the point of view where maybe that's not the best way to get closer together. Maybe the best way to become closer is to acknowledge that I'm on this team and you're on this team, and we can reach over the aisle and shake our hands and we can hug and we can do whatever. But it's like, I'm me and you're you, and this is how we can have different perspectives and different teams and a different idea of where to move forward in the world as a connected world. Because if you're going to force people to do that, it's not going to work. If you're going to force people to be like, look, get along. You love each other, right? Yeah, you do. I knew you would. It's not going to work that way. People do things on their own accord. So if you say like, okay, look, we have our differences, divide. You can be you, but let's try to get along in some way instead of just saying you're all the same. Everybody's the same, right? I mean, we're all human, yes, but there are real things such as nationalities and religions and ethnicities. And you can't just erase all of human history and say that it doesn't matter. Like, oh, fuck religion. Who gives a shit? Well, man, a lot of people are really pissed. Like I was talking to this Jewish conservative gal on Twitter the other day, and she's like talking so much shit about how Bernie cares about Muslims more than Jews because he's not proud of his Jewish faith. And I'm like, why? Because he doesn't talk about it as much? She's like, yeah, he didn't talk about it. It's like, I like my politicians to have a secular viewpoint in America. Like, we are not a religious, we shouldn't let religion get in the way of politics and say, like, just because you don't believe in the same God as me, that, fuck all these people. Like, to me, that is incredibly backwards. But people believe those things, man. And it's trickling into, like, white people in America. The white people have the same viewpoints as everybody else in all these, like, incredibly racist parts of the world. But we should be the shining city on the hill. We are America. This is why I think that, for example, Poland doesn't have to let any Muslims in. They don't have to let any brown people in. Why would they? They don't have to. It's not their prerogative because they've been invaded their entire lives by the Mongols, by the Russians, by the Germans. They're like, fuck all these people. We want to be happy and on our own and sovereign. America's different. America can say, you know what? That's not what we stand for, because we don't have to be like these Eastern Bloc former communist countries that are all this. They want to be a white ethno state. Fuck them. We don't need to be that way because we've never been that way. We started out as a brown continent. We're going to return it to a brown continent, whether the white people occupied this land for 300 years or not. So we have America's always going to be different. America's always going to be the shining city on the hill that says, fuck racism and fuck bigotry. And you know what? This is what it's all about, baby. The goddamn world!
Yeah, dude, look at this world. Look how warped. This world is super warped right now, if you can see.
Beautiful.
It's like
Love
all of a
it.
sudden the Pacific just kind of jumps up there, turns around. It's, right now places are getting warped around in this weird-ass globe. See? But that's where it is. Two halves didn't get put together. The two halves didn't really get get molded together. It's like, things are just
The world's not every nation is not equal. Every nation is not the same. It's just like saying men and women are equal. Well, as humans, yes, but there are very interesting and very important biological differences and hormonal differences that we have to take into account.
Yeah. So
egalitarian, complementary. We are complementary. Men and women are complementary, but not completely equal. We're not the same. You can say the same thing about countries. United States of America is not the same as Hungary or New Zealand or Morocco or China, but we can all get along with acknowledging those very important and very real differences. Yeah. It's good to have differences. It's not good to all be the same and be commies. It's also not good to kill each other and be far-right extremists that are fucking fascists. Fuck fascism.
I don't think anybody, but I don't think the other side is saying that we're all the same and we're all equal. I mean, you have the rule of law. So you can't invade smaller states. Pretty accept that, I think. And but there's a matter of process here that is the devil's in the details. I mean, I think that everyone would say, yes, we want to have peace, and we can all respect our differences. No two countries are the same. Nobody's identical. But at the same time, what's the best way to, I just come back to the EU and Brexit and all that. And it's like, well, is it better to, we'll have to discuss that at some point, but God. But
a lot of shit, man. A lot going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that we're not going to have some global unitary state anytime soon. So
only if the aliens take over, which is the subject of my second book, and that will come out hopefully during the election next year. I want to write it soon. I'm pretty much over my first book, done with that shit because it's annoying and it's pissing me off. But my second book is about a potential alien invasion, and aliens actually are really cool and they help us out, but we're still angry and we hate them. We want to deport them back to Uranus. That's the plot of my second book.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
March 27th.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got to board a plane to Nashville.
All right, man. You're flying to Nashville tonight?
Woo! Yeah, taking a red eye to Nashville. Dumb idea. It's only 4 hours away from here, but I was just like, it was a cheaper airplane, and I want to get there before the whole crew. I'm going to a bachelor party. I'm checking into I rented the house. I kind of want to check in early. I'm just going to take a nap before everybody gets there, I guess. I get in fucking middle of the night. It's stupid, but whatever, man. It's going to be a fun trip. Never been to Tennessee before. I just booked the Jack Daniels tour. I'm excited. We're going to go to the Jack Daniels Lynchburg, Tennessee tour. We're going to do some great things, eat some hot chicken. Love it, man. I'm excited. I'll report back to you next week about how great Nashville, Tennessee is if I make it back. Well, I hope I do.
Yes.
Music City, USA. Music City, USA. So in honor of that, I'm wearing my Uncle Acid shirt. Music City, USA, baby.
Cool.
Acid across America.
All right. Well, congratulations and best to everyone there. And we'll expect a 700-page Mueller-style report when you return.
Wrist tap, baby. Keep it alive.
All right. Signing off.
See you later.